Well, we're here at TSPN News Desk. Mike Spence with Gene Mancebo, General Manager of the Amador County Water Agency. And that first part was very insightful. And it's good that the agenda is light so we could just talk about nothing but the GSL. Everybody wants to know, how big is that pipe going to be? And how much water is going to come through that pipe? And it might be good just to describe the size of the pipe, why it's 24 inches in diameter, how much water is coming through there and why. And are you allowed to just take as much water down through that pipe as you'd like? Or?
No, we're limited. We have certain rights with the state, and we have to apply for those rights. And so we're limited of both the volume that we can take on an annual basis as well as how fast we can take it out of the river. And that's kind of a limitation. And so we've sized the pipe to kind of match those water rights. I can get in all the numbers, but we're talking about 3 cubic feet per second is what we do now, and we're looking to go to 5 cubic feet per second with this new pipeline. And of course, we have to make it a little bit larger because we're flowing by gravity over a little bit longer distance, so it's not being pushed through the pipe like we have with a pump. And that has a lot to do with the design. And so yes, it is kind of a 24-inch, and then a portion of it is 20-inch pipe.
It's not, I've heard worries that it's like a big straw and it could suck the lake dry at the top and it could just take all the water out of that. How does that work engineering-wise? Is it a big giant straw?
Well, no, it's actually pretty small in comparison. Think about it this way. PG&E sends water out of that same reservoir at up to 750 cubic feet per second. We're looking at taking out at 5 cubic feet per second. Huge difference. So you can just imagine the difference between the kind of flow rates that are coming out that PG&E uses. Now they're putting water back into it and taking it out, but we're a very small straw, if you want to look at it that way. Very small straw coming out of that large reservoir. If the reservoir was full and we were the only one taking water out of it, it would last about 6 months. So for our water consumption.
Well, I know water is, we've had a lot of politicians come on the show, and I think it was Senator Berryhill who had said his father always used to tell him, or his grandfather, that bourbon was for drinking and water was for fighting over. And so there's always a lot of divisiveness over water and, rates in general. So people are always worried about the water in the river. And it affects, the Foothill Conservancy and the designation for wild and scenic, and we're always worried about our water, at least my experience in the last 10 years here in Amador County. Water is a huge issue, and we have such good, clean water already. Now, how does this gravity supply line, does it make our water any cleaner or any different?
Well, it will improve the water quality by going up higher up in the watershed. There is less contaminants in the water, believe it or not, and it's cleaner water. We'll actually be able to run our treatment plant for longer periods of time without having to clean the filters as often, just because of that. We'll save energy and cost just by the simple fact that it's cleaner water.
Cleaner, safer water. Yeah, that does sound like a big difference. And you're matching these growth worries though as well with that service. And this seems like something that's going to really be kind of a sustainable thing, more sustainable thing into the future. But people do worry about growth up country. We're always talking about maintaining the character of Amador County in all parts of the county and especially up country, and I've heard concerns that this may affect growth. Do you see that happening in any way, growth-wise?
No, I don't really see it affecting growth. We've always had water up country, so just because we're putting it into a pipe instead of a pump, through a pump system, I don't see why that changes it. It's there. There's never been huge growth up country. I just don't see that happening in the future. Given the terrain and the fact that even take wastewater, for instance, there's not public wastewater in most areas. It's just not really a place that we're going to see the growth, not in my opinion. I think that growth occurs more in some of the flatter areas of the county.
Right, and it matches up with where that gravity supply line is, matches up with the general plan of the county in terms of where it wants growth. It's not bringing growth to areas that the county hasn't already allocated as being, growing areas in their general plan too as well.
Correct.
And it seems like, when you think of the districts that you have that Comanche Lake Comanche area, and then you have the lower area, and then you have the upcountry area, and you have consolidated all these different water services into one agency. And is there a way of connecting that water that comes through the gravity supply line? Why is it such an upcountry issue and not an issue that affects the rest of the county? Well, doesn't that water come down the hill? Isn't there a way of connecting that water to the rest of the county?
Well, I mean, it is possible someday it might be connected, but the reality is the bulk of the water usage is along the cities. The 5 cities, we provide water to all 5 cities, either retailer or by wholesale. But that's where the most of the water is used. So it doesn't make sense to take where you have a small outtake of water and try to provide that on an area that uses much, much more water. It uses 6 times as much water, basically, as the upcountry. So it was never designed to do that. We don't intend to do that. It's really just kind of use the water where it's needed, and there's 2 different outtake sources, and they're sized accordingly. So I expect that that'll remain as it is. However, if we ever have the opportunity to intertie the 2 for emergency purposes, it makes a lot of sense. That might happen someday, but it's never been the intent that we would take the water from the upcountry system and try to use that water to provide water in the, you want to call it the downcountry or the city level cities.
Are there miles in between these service areas in terms of a new pipe that would have to be installed? How would you connect something like that, the upcountry water to the Sutter Creek area, for example? How do you bring that water downhill?
Well,
if you had to in an emergency.
Yeah, in an emergency, they're about 2 miles apart currently. And so it would be possible to lay about 2 miles of pipe and intertie the 2. We might need to, if we're going to put water up the hill, we would have to pump it. Going down the hill, we have to reduce the pressure. But it is possible, and it's something we would look at, but primarily for emergency purposes. That would really be the only reason that we would do that.
Well, I think we're almost running out of time, but I remember a meeting. It was an old guy. Oh, we have 5 minutes. Alan, thank you very much. We've got lots to talk about. I've got notes here. I got about 10 pages of notes here. I was gonna close with a meeting that I had attended. There was an old guy in the audience, and you guys you had a lot of structural plans that you were showing everybody, and from an engineering standpoint. And the details are it's hard to get your hands around, the whole subject anytime there's a change, in structure and cost and all these rate-paying issues. But there was an old guy named Bill in the audience, and I don't remember his last name, but he was obviously an old-timer. And he said, why don't we all just get rid of the water agency, take our buckets down to the river. Get our water from the river with a bucket. It's not that easy. No. You guys have your hands full in providing clean and safe water. I was surprised that there weren't that many water users. There were about 7,000 water users in the county, but they were all so spread out.
Right.
So the issue is that these districts are so separated from one another. Why can't we all just kind of join them up and make all one rate and consolidate everything and have everybody pay the same water rate and everybody get the same clean, safe water? You ever see that happening in the future, Gene?
Well, I do, and I think what we're working towards is charging the same amount for water. So anybody with the same meter size is going to pay the same rate for the water they use. The only thing that would be different is debt service. If there's loans against the system, they would retain those. But we're moving towards, it's the same people reading the meter. It's the same treatment plant operators. There's a lot of things that are very, very similar in operating the systems. So everyone ought to take and pay the same for water. That makes a lot of sense to me. And we are moving in that direction. There's a lot of pipe out there. We probably have over 100 miles of pipe that we operate and maintain for those 7,000 customers. There is some separation between some of the systems, but we do a lot of the same operations, maintenance, do the same things to provide that service to the customers.
Well, having the issue with the water agency and rates it reminds me of what's happening with the school districts. And, consolidating schools. And in the future, if you have to close one school and keep the others open, which school do you close? Where do you make the cuts? And it's a similar situation. Plymouth wants Pioneer Elementary to be closed. Pioneer Elementary would like to see them close Zion, and we're also provincial throughout the county in our own little area, and we don't want it to affect us. But we are all interconnected in the same county. And, your board is a good example of a group of individuals who, make their decisions based on what's best for the county.
Right.
And the overall big picture versus what's best for people specifically upcountry or specifically in Sutter Creek or, individuals here or there. You guys really have to make decisions that are best for the county and also the economic survival of the agency. We have a couple of minutes. I'd like to clear up in my mind. It's not necessarily a governmental agency. The water agency kind of took over these water districts that were turned over from the county years ago. And how does it actually, how do you look at the water agency, Gene?
Well, I mean, we are a governmental agency. I sometimes hate to use that word, but that we are. We are created by state legislation. Our boundaries are the entire county. So we can provide water, wastewater services, even stormwater services anywhere within the county. The agency actually acquired the Amador water system, which serves all 5 cities, by purchasing that from PG&E. But all the other systems were turned over to the agency. They were ran by, whether it be small groups or organizations or small CSDs, and they wanted somebody else to take it over. They didn't want to continue to try to keep up with all the state regulations and requirements. They may not have had all the staffing necessary. So we were there, and we've taken them over so that we could provide those services to the community.
Well, you've done a heck of a job in keeping the water agency going. I know you had come on board, and it was kind of a lean time, and you really leaned the staff down as a general manager.
Absolutely.
And you cut every cost there was to cut. And I've listened to the board meetings, and it's pretty impressive what everybody's done over there. I know there's a lot of other issues that the ratepayers are concerned with, and I'm sure you're going to hear about that over the next few weeks. And we just want to thank everybody. It's very insightful, and I want to thank you for coming on the show on the news desk today.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Gene.
it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Bye now.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.